Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari जय राधा माधव राधा माधव राधे। जय पंचतत्व 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 जय पंचतत्व। जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय प्रभुपाद। जय ओम विश्वपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य सूत्र सत श्री श्रीमद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस श्री A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki। ISKCON founder Jaya Deity founder Jaya Srila Prabhupada ki। Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki। Samveda Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki। Gaur Premanande। Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha। Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarva-bhūtam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha। Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This morning we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 24, the renunciation of Kardama Muni, Shloka number 46. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. ātmānaṁ sarva-bhūteṣu. ātmānaṁ sarva-bhūteṣu. ātmānaṁ sarva-bhūteṣu. bhagavantam avasthitam. bhagavantam avasthitam. bhagavantam avasthitam. apaśyat sarva-bhūtāni. apaśyat sarva-bhūtāni. apaśyat sarva-bhūtāni. bhagavat yapi cātmani. bhagavat yapi cātmani. ātmānaṁ sarva-bhūteṣu. bhagavantam avasthitam. apaśyat sarva-bhūtāni. bhagavatyapi cātmani. ātmānaṁ sarva-bhūteṣu. bhagavantam avasthitam. apaśyat sarva-bhūtāni. bhagavatyapi cātmani. ātmānaṁ sarva-bhūteṣu bhagavantam avasthitam apaśyat sarva-bhūtāni bhagavatyapi cātmani 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 ātmānaṁ sarva-bhūteṣu bhagavantam avasthitam apaśyat sarva-bhūtāni bhagavantyapi cātmani ātmānaṁ sarva-bhūteṣu bhagavantam avasthitam apaśyat sarva-bhūtāni bhagavatyapi cātmani. Word for word. ātmānaṁ, the Supersoul. Sarva-bhūteṣu, in all living beings. Bhagavantam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Avasthitam, situated. Apaśyat, he saw. Sarva-bhūtāni, all living beings. Bhagavati, in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Api, moreover. Cha, and. ātmani, on the Supersoul. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. He began to see that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is seated in everyone's heart, and that everyone is existing on him, because he is the Supersoul of everyone. Responsively, he began to see that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is seated in everyone's heart, and that everyone is existing on him, because he is the Supersoul of everyone. Purport. That everyone is existing on the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not mean that everyone is also Godhead. This is also explained in Bhagavad-gītā. Everything is resting on him, the Supreme Lord, but that does not mean that the Supreme Lord is also everywhere. This mysterious position has to be understood by highly advanced devotees. There are three kinds of devotees: the neophyte devotees, the intermediate devotee, and the advanced devotee. The neophyte devotee does not understand the techniques of devotional service, but simply offers devotional service to the deity in the temple. The intermediate devotee understands who God is, who is a devotee, who is a non-devotee, and who is innocent, and he deals with such persons differently. But a person who sees that the Lord is sitting as Paramātmā in everyone's heart, and that everything is depending or existing on the transcendental energy of the Supreme Lord, is in the highest devotional position. ātmānaṁ sarva-bhūteṣu bhagavantam avasthitam apaśyat sarva-bhūtāni bhagavati cātmani. He began to see that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is seated in everyone's heart and that everyone is existing on him because he is the Supersoul of everyone. This is the penultimate shloka of the chapter, the renunciation of Kardama Muni. In tomorrow's verse, Kardama Muni will be attaining the path back to Godhead, and then from day after tomorrow, we will be starting a section of chapters Kapila Siksha, starting with the glories of devotional service, where Kapila Dev will begin to instruct his mother Devahuti in transcendental knowledge. So for the last several months, we've been hearing about Devahuti, Kardama, how they came together, the austerities they performed, and the enjoyment they undertook together, culminating in the birth of their children, 9 daughters and 1 son, Kapila Dev. And this chapter is describing how, having performed all these activities, Kardama Muni is now going to renounce the world and fully dedicate his mind, body, and words in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here he is just finished his exchange with Kapila Dev, and he's taken permission to renounce family life and go to the forest to pursue his spiritual pursuits. So a common theme of this chapter was, and it's been discussed several times in previous verses and by previous speakers, is Kardama Muni, it seems that he is in an ideal situation, that he has the Supreme Lord himself living in his house as his son, and therefore what is the necessity of him to renounce? And it's, it seems contradictory when one is supposed to be meditating upon the Lord, then the Lord is right there in front of one, so why leave the association of the Lord and go to the forest for apaśyat and meditation? So it is quite an interesting conundrum. And of course, Srila Prabhupada has explained in the previous, in shloka number 35 of this chapter, that the authoritative statement of the Vedas has to be followed. Whatever is spoken in the Vedas and whatever is practiced in accordance with the injunctions of the Vedas is to be accepted as authoritative in society. So Kardama Muni, even before he got married, he had warned Swayambhuva Manu that after children are born, I'm going to return to my devotional practices fully. I'm not going to stay in household life forever. And he told the same thing to Devahuti. After the daughters were born, actually, Kardama Muni was preparing to leave. Then Devahuti requested him to stay longer, that she needs a son to protect her if he's not present. And of course, that was the prediction of the Lord also, that he would take birth as the son of Kapila and Devahuti, of Kardama and Devahuti. And another aspect of this is also that if we see the interactions between Kapila and Kardama, they have an exchange earlier in this chapter. It's not in the Vatsalya Ras. Kardama Muni's relationship with the Lord is more in Dasya Ras. Therefore, it's not actually compatible for him to relate to Kapila Dev as a parent, as a father. And you can see by the exchange of words, Kardama Muni is praying to Kapila Dev. As we see in Bhagavatam, so many prayers, great devotees offer prayers regularly to the Lord. So in the same spirit, the prayers in the mood of, or in reverence, in the mood of Dasya, Kapila Dev, Kardama Muni has been speaking to the Lord in that way. Whereas if we look at other devotees who have actually the Vatsalya Bhav, they have a very different way of interacting with the Lord. Even if their Lord is their son, we see from, for example, Nanda Maharaj, Jagannath Mishra, that they don't relate to the Lord at all as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They don't relate in Dasya Bhav because they're actually situated in Vatsalya Ras. So therefore, Kardama Muni, he offered his prayers, offered his obeisances to Kapila Dev, and he didn't really relate to him as a father to son. He knew that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He treated him as such. He prayed to him as such. He took his permission, and then he left for the forest. We couldn't imagine Nanda Maharaj speaking to Krishna like this, or Jagannath Mishra speaking to Nimai like this. It's not compatible with their Vatsalya ras. Otherwise, it's called rasabhas. When the rasas are mixed or incompatible, then it's called rasabhas. So therefore, Karama Muni, another reason he didn't stay, because he wasn't in that Vatsalya bhav. Another interesting consideration is that there's no evidence or description here that Kapila Dev was a child. There's no Leela of Kapila Dev as a baby or as a young boy. It seems that he has immediately grown up to full maturity. And actually, if we look back at how the 9 daughters were born, we can see the same principle. It says that Karama Muni impregnated Devahuti, and the same day, the 9 daughters were born. And it seems that they also grew up immediately, because just a few verses later, we see they're already getting married. We can see this in the higher planets and in the previous yugas. There wasn't much of a childhood, a babyhood, like the demigods. When they take birth, they become full youth. Or even Krishna's pastimes also, we know from Pradyumna. Pradyumna was stolen, Krishna's son, by Rukmini, was stolen as a baby and thrown into the ocean, swallowed by a fish. And the fish was caught and brought to the palace of Shambhara, the very asura who had kidnapped him. So when they cut open the fish, they found this beautiful baby inside. And within a very few days, it seems that Pradyumna grew up to be a full youth, because his wife from a previous birth, Rati, she was working in that same kitchen, and she took care of Pradyumna when he was a baby. But in a very short time, she started exhibiting her conjugal attraction to what seemed to be like her, adopted son. And Pradyumna had to ask her, Mother, why are you behaving like this now? You're changing your rasa with me. And she had to explain, yes, it's because in my last life I was your wife. So it says that Pradyumna grew up very quickly. So it appears not just that the 9 daughters were, they were born immediately and grew up also. Otherwise, you can imagine 9 daughters, and ordinarily it would take 9 children, 9 months, pregnancy period. That's 81 months. That's almost 7 years. The Devahuti would be pregnant. That's the general, at least in Kali Yuga, that would be the standard procedure. But it wasn't like that. She was impregnated, and on the same day itself, the children were born, the daughters were born, and it would appear they grew up very quickly, because just a few verses later, they are being married to the 9 sages. So similarly, Kapila Dev, there's no description that he was born and he had a Poganda Lila and had a Kumara Lila and had a Kaishora Lila. Immediately, it seems that he's grown up. So therefore also that Vatsalya Bhav is not the same. When we see Krishna's childhood pastimes, they're very, very sweet, and Nanda and Yashoda are relishing those pastimes with their full maternal affection. Just after the Damodar Lila, after Nanda Maharaj untied Krishna from the mortar, and the gopis started playing with Krishna, the elderly gopis. And they started glorifying Krishna and singing about his glories, singing about his pastimes. And then they started making Krishna dance. Say, Krishna, dance like this, dance like that, clap your hands. And it says that Krishna was acting just like a puppet in the hands of the gopis, because he was so much conquered by their Vatsalya Prema. And Prabhupada says that after Nanda Maharaj did his puja, he called Krishna, "Oh, Krishna, please bring my shoes." And Krishna, a little toddler, he put his shoes on his head, Nanda Maharaj's shoes on his head, and toddled over to Nanda Maharaj to deliver the shoes. And we've seen the painting, Krishna with the shoes, the karams, wooden shoes, on his head, bringing them to Nanda Maharaj. Or Yashoda would ask Krishna, "Please bring my asana," like some kind of wooden asana, low table they used for sitting. And Krishna would struggle to bring it because it was heavier than the shoes. And then the gopis would say, "Oh, Krishna, bring the mortar," grinding mortar. It's the same mortar that he just used to drag and knock the trees over. But now he's playing as a baby, and he couldn't move the mortar. It was too heavy for him, so he was just moving his arms, trying to, show that he's strong, but he's still not big enough to move the mortar. So in this way, the relationship between Krishna's parents in the childhood pastimes are very, very sweet and intimate. But we don't see that here. Karama Muni is not having that Vatsalya Bhav, he is having the mood of awe and reverence in the Dasya Rasa. Similarly, Jagannath Mishra, he also didn't relate to Nimai as Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, there were so many hints that Nimai is not an ordinary child, so many signs and indications, and they would see strange, divine personalities coming to offer prayers, and they see the footprints of Krishna in their house. But Sachimata and Jagannath Mishra never really understood that, our child is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Nimai, of course, was very, very naughty. There are so many pastimes he enacted in his childhood, making messes and harassing people and fighting and playing with puppies. Also similar to Krishna, many, many sweet pastimes he displayed here in Mayapur. And Jagannath Mishra, he was actually quite a stern father. And he was very concerned that Nimai is too restless, he's too chanchal, he's too naughty, he's not studying properly. And he would chastise Nimai regularly. We know when Nimai stole the offerings of the Brahmana, Jagannath Mishra had a stick and was chasing Nimai. Yashoda Mai also had the stick, but when she saw that Krishna was scared, she threw the stick away. But Jagannath Mishra, he seemed to be going even one step further. He was ready to, chastise Nimai very severely, and the others had to pacify him and lock Nimai away. So on one occasion, when Nimai done some naughty activities, the other parents used to come and complain to Sachimata, to Jagannath Mishra, that your Nimai has done this, your Nimai has done that. He's corrupting all the boys, becoming like a big gang of young kids who are causing disturbance in Navadvip, just like the gopis used to come and complain to Yashoda about Krishna. So after one time, such a complaint session happened, and Jagannath Mishra was very upset, and he started chastising Nimai very severely. And he was concerned, that if Nimai grows up to be like a vagabond, a ruffian, doesn't study, doesn't behave soberly like a gentleman, then no one's going to want to offer their daughter to him in marriage. He's going to end up spoiled. So he was chastising Nimai very severely. So that night, when Jagannath Mishra was asleep, he had a dream. And some very wonderful personality came in his dream. And the different acharyas have given different explanations. In some Loshandas Thakaris, he seems to indicate that this personality was actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, like in a grown-up state. But in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it just says it was a very wonderful Brahmana, beautiful Brahmana, who came to correct Jagannath Mishra, who came to tell him that he shouldn't chastise Nimai, because Nimai is a special personality. And he was telling Jagannath Mishra, you don't know who your son is, that's why you're trying to educate him, that's why you're trying to chastise him. You don't know who he is. He's a great self-realized personality. You don't need to, there's no point in you trying to educate him or correct him. He's already perfect in himself. Now, I'd just like to read some of the discussion between the Brahman and Jagannath Mishra. So this is all in the dream. So the Brahman said, Vipra kahe, putra jodi daiva siddha hoy, shata siddha jnana tobe shikha bhartha hoy. So he's saying that if your son is like a divine, liberated personality, with a self-effulgent, perfect knowledge, then what is the use of your education? And Jagannath Mishra, this is all happening in the dream. So Jagannath Mishra, in his dream, he replies. They actually have an argument. Mishra kahe, putra kene nahe, narayan, tatapi pitara dharma putrer shikhan. He says that, you're saying he's a divine personality, even if he's Narayan, he's telling the Brahman, even if my son is Narayan, then still it's my duty to educate him. Jagannath Mishra replied, even if my son is not a common man, but Narayan, still it is the duty of a father to instruct his son. So in this way, they're going back and forth. And Jagannath Mishra's conclusion is, he actually says it himself, even if my son is Narayan, and he doesn't know that his son is Narayan, or perhaps you could say the source of Narayan, the Sava-avatar Sarashiromani, but what to speak of just a regular, Siddha Purush or demigod, even if he's Narayan, still it's my duty to correct him. So when Jagannath Mishra woke up, he shared his dream with his friends and relatives, and they were all very astonished. Because everyone knew that Nimai was, somebody special. But whenever the knowledge of the supremacy of the Lord interferes with the rasa, then by Krishna's Yogamaya potency, that's forgotten. There were indications, Nanda and Yashoda had indications that Krishna was the Supreme Lord or great personality. But because that would interfere with their bhav, with their rasa, with the Lord, therefore, by Krishna's Yogamaya potency, they would forget that and just think, oh no, Krishna is just my child. I have to feed him, I have to bathe him, I have to educate him. Same, Jagannath Mishra and Sachimata had the same experience. So therefore, Kardama Muni, not having that Vatsalya ras, he is quite happy to leave home and perform his devotional service in solitude as a bhajana nandi and travel around the world, completely renounced and giving up all material connections. And as we see in this verse, as he's progressing in his meditation, he's witnessing the Lord in everyone's heart and understanding the Lord as the Supersoul of everyone. So this is the Uttamadhikari platform. And Prabhupada talks about this in the Purport. There are the Kanishta Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, and Uttamadhikari platform. So this is described in more detail by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Sanatana Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And it's also, the original verses are found in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, when the 9 Yogendras are speaking to Maharaj Nimi. So there are 3 verses, one describing the Uttamadhikari, one describing the Madhyamadhikari, and one describing the Kanishta Adhikari. So if you look at the verse describing the Uttamadhikari, it's very similar to today's shloka in Bhagavatam. Sarva-bhūteṣu apaśyat bhagavat bhavamatmanaha bhūtāni bhagavati ātmānam esha bhagavatāttama. Very similar words and translation. So Havi Muni is saying, the most advanced devotee sees within everything the soul of all souls, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. Just like here it says, that Kardama Muni began to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead seated in everyone's heart. Consequently, he sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord and understands that everything that exists is eternally situated within the Lord. Same here. Everyone is existing on him because he's the Supersoul. So therefore, Prabhupada is in the Purport talking about the Uttamadhikari devotee. At the end of the Purport, he says that one who is in the highest devotional position, he sees the Lord sitting as Paramātmā in everyone's heart, and that everything rests on the transcendental energy of the Lord. So in contrast to that, there is the Madhyama Adhikari, which is the platform of the Goshthiyanandi, or the preacher. Because the Uttamadhikari, he sees everything as the Lord. He sees the hand of the Lord everywhere. He sees everything as spiritual. He doesn't discriminate. Stavara jangama deki na deki tarmurti sarvatra hoy nija ishta devaspurti. He doesn't see which living entities are moving, or not moving, the trees or the animals. But everywhere he looks, he just sees the Lord manifest. The potency of the Lord manifests. We see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he's in that bhav, he would go and kick the tiger and tell the tiger to chant Hare Krishna. So that's on the platform of Uttamadhikari. The Madhyamadhikari, he won't go to a tiger and try to make the animals chant. So how does a Madhyamadhikari act? That's also described in great logical sequence. Ishvarata tadhineshu balisheshu dishatshu cha prema maitri kripopeksha yakaroti sa madhyama. So there are 4 categories of personality and 4 ways to relate to them. Everything in very logical order. Ishvara is the Lord. Tadadhineshu means those who are under the Lord, serving the Lord, the devotees. Balisheshu means the innocent. And Dvishatsu, those who are envious of the Lord. So these 4 categories are there. Krishna, the devotees, the innocent public, and the non-devotees who are envious, the demons. So how to relate to those 4 personalities? Prema, Maitri, Kripa, Upeksha. So prema is for the Lord. We offer our prema to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in one of the various rasas. The devotees, prema, Maitri, we make friendship with the devotees. We associate and learn from each other how to progress in devotional service. Then the innocent people, the balisheshu, kripa. The Madhyamadhikari, they give their mercy, they preach to the fallen souls, the innocent people, to try to bring them to Krishna consciousness. And the envious people, the demons, they should be avoided. Upeksha, they should be neglected or avoided because there's no real point in trying to preach to a demoniac personality who will simply be offended and create more offenses to the devotees, create more offenses to the Lord. Such kind of people should be avoided. So in this way, it's a very logical sequence how to relate to each personality. Then there's the Kanishta Adhikari. So his description is given. This is 11th canto, chapter 2, verse 45 to 47. So this is 47. Archayam eva hariye pujam ya shradhaye hate natat bhakteshu chanyeshu sabhakta prakrita smritaha. A devotee who faithfully engages in the worship of the deity in the temple, but he does not behave properly towards other devotees or people, is called a prakrita bhakta, a materialistic devotee, and is considered to be in the lowest position. So the Uttamadhikari, he sees everyone engaged in devotional service, doesn't discriminate. The Madhyamadhikari discriminates. And the Kanishta Adhikari, he only really sees Krishna and me. And he neglects the other devotees, or maybe extended Krishna and my guru, or Krishna and my guru and my god brothers, but they don't respect the general mass of devotees. More attached to me and Krishna, or me and my guru and Krishna. And they may criticize other devotees. They, although they're in the neophyte position, they think they're very advanced, and they can be proud of their worship, of their opulence. They can also be very easily influenced by materialistic people, by wealth or by beauty or other things. They get easily distracted because they don't have shastric knowledge. Their realization is partial and immature. As some places is described, they're called bhakta praya, like almost a devotee, kind of a devotee. So that's the Kanishta Adhikari. Sometimes when I think of the Kanishta Adhikari, we can see it sometimes in action. Devotees who are very much focused only on my guru, because they think that they're so important. So therefore, their guru must also be the best guru, and therefore, if someone's not the disciple of their guru, then they're secondary or they're not as advanced. And in my own mind, I've kind of seen how even in the temple, like when we're moving around, there are devotees who offer obeisances in different positions, right? So there's like in Kanishta Pranam, like if you go near Nrsingadev, there's a big crowd there. It's like the most hard area to navigate. But every now and then you get a devotee who will just suddenly offer dandavats right in the middle of the crowd. We've all experienced this, at least the men have experienced. Maybe the ladies have a better system. Because we also do the dandavat pranam, it takes off, a lot of area in the temple. And there may be 10, 15 devotees who are like stuck because you can't move. Someone is paying obeisances there. And they're doing their, Mangalacharya and on. And sometimes actually they have to like, Prabhu, get up, you're blocking Maharaj, you're blocking the pujari. No, in me and Krishna, I have to offer my pranams. So something maybe we can take heed of that, some temples you have plenty of space, but in Mayapur on festival days, we all want to offer obeisances, but we have to do it on a Madhyama platform, considering, is it going to cause a disturbance to the devotees? And not just that my obeisances are so important that everything else has to stop. So like that, we could categorize Uttama, Madhyama, Kanishta in various different aspects. So the other perhaps important consideration when we think of Karama Muni's renouncing is that practically we know from Shastra that the mood of separation is actually higher than the union with the Lord. Or maybe on a more relevant platform for us, we could say the Vani and the Vapu. Because how many devotees can be with Krishna all the time? Even in Dwarka, Krishna expands himself 16,108 times. So each queen thinks that, Krishna is with me all the time. Or during the Rasa Leela, Krishna expands, so each gopi has one Krishna. But even then, we hear from Krishna book, when Krishna wakes up in the morning, he goes to do his duties, then the queens are missing him immediately. And then Krishna goes out, he goes to the assembly hall of the Yadus during the day, then all the 16,108 Krishnas become one, and Krishna leaves, and the queens are waiting at home in separation. Even Mother Yashoda, she's with Krishna in the morning and the evening. In the daytime, Krishna is with the gopas. Krishna is with the gopis at night, but in the daytime, he's not with them. So there's no devotee really who is with Krishna 24 hours a day. So therefore, the mood of separation or the serving the instructions is a higher principle. Same with the spiritual master. How many devotees are able to be with their spiritual master all the time? You know, it's very rare opportunity. So many of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, had very minimal association with Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada himself, he only had a few occasions where he had direct interaction with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But he writes, there's a letter from Srila Prabhupada to Satadanya Prabhu, who's a Mayapur resident, where he talks about this. This is from a letter to Satadanya, Calcutta, February 20, 1972. So Prabhupada writes, so far personal association with the Guru is concerned, I was only with my Guru Maharaj 4 or 5 times. But I have never left his association, not even for a moment. Because I am following his instructions, I have never felt any separation. There are some of my god brothers here in India who had constant personal association with Guru Maharaj. So Prabhupada in the 30s and 20s and 30s, he was not a senior disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And there were some very senior disciples who had constant association, who were already sannyasis, who were with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur from the beginning. But Prabhupada says there were some god brothers who had constant personal association, but who were neglecting his orders. This is just like the bug who is sitting on the lap of the king. That's another example that's giving. A bug or a mosquito that's sitting on the lap of a king or a great personality. He may be very puffed up by his position, but all he can succeed in doing is biting the king. Personal association is not so important as association through service. So this is Srila Prabhupada himself speaking his realization that the personal association is not very important. Much more important is the Vani Seva. And we can see that the instructions that Srila Prabhupada got from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur all the way back in 1922, he kept those instructions in his heart. They were reaffirmed in 1935, December, when Srila Prabhupada wrote a letter to his Guru Maharaj and asked for some personal instruction, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur reiterated his first instruction to Srila Prabhupada that he should preach in the English language. And then we know that it took 30 more years, over 40 years, from the first time Prabhupada got that instruction to when he actually started to carry it out when he went to America in 1965. But he says he was never separate from his spiritual master because he was always following his instructions. So another aspect of this, it's not just with the spiritual master and disciple, but even with Krishna himself. There's one verse that when I came across it a few months ago, it really struck me. So it's actually one of my favorite pastimes, is the wives of the Yajnik Brahmanas, the deliverance of the Brahmanas' wives. When Krishna and Balaram were in the forest, they were feeling hungry. So Krishna sent the Gopas to beg from the Brahmanas who were doing a big sacrifice nearby, and therefore they prepared lots of bhoga, to give some food for Krishna and Balaram who were in the forest. So we know the Brahmanas, they refused. They didn't consider Krishna and Balaram very important. So then Krishna told the boys, go to their wives. They're very affectionate to me. They'll give you. So immediately the Brahmanas' wives, not only did they gather all the bhoga for Krishna, but they personally came and brought it to Krishna. So when they came to meet Krishna, then Krishna spoke one verse to them. And I came across this shloka. I was like, wow, this is incredible. And there's no purport. So I was like really trying to find, what is the deeper meaning of this verse. So we can chant it together perhaps. It's quite simple. Shravana darshana dhyanan, Shravana darshana dhyanan, Mayi bhavo nukirtanat, Mayi bhavo nukirtanat, Natata sanikarshena, Natata sanikarshena, Pratiyata tato grihan. So Pratiyata tato grihan means please go back to your homes. So he's telling the Yajnik, the Dvijapatnis, that you can't stay here with me in the forest. That's not going to work. you have to go back home. And it's not by my personal association that love for me is developed, mayi bhava. How you develop love for me? Shravanat, darshanat, dhyanat, kirtanat. By 4 things. By hearing about me, by meditating upon me, by chanting about me, and remembering me. Yeah, 4 things. Shravana, dhyana, kirtana, and darshana. 4 things. Having darshan, that means like darshan of the deity, not direct darshan. Natata sanikarshina. Sanikarshana means my personal association, not so much by my personal association. So, he was telling the ladies, you should go home, you hear about me, chant about me, remember me, have darshan of my form, my murti. That way you develop your bhav for me. So I thought this is a very interesting shloka. There's no purport. So when I went to Bhaktivedanta Research Center in Calcutta, they have all the Acharya's books and commentaries. So I managed to find the volume of Bhagavatam, and though I don't know the Sanskrit numbers very well, after a long time I was able to find the verse. And there did seem to be quite a few Sanskrit commentaries. I took photos of all of them. I was thinking, who am I going to find who can translate this? So anyway, it was just kept pending. Then after a few chapters later, I was reading when the gopis came to see Krishna. When Krishna played his flute at night, in the Rasa Panchadhyaya section, the gopis rushed to see Krishna. And then I was like stunned to see that Krishna spoke the exact same shloka to them. Sometimes we see shlokas that are very similar, or they have maybe 1 or 2 lines similar. But it was the exact same shloka, Shravanat Darshanat Dhyanan, Mayi Bhavo Nukirtanat, Natata Sanikarshena, Pritiyata Tadogrihan. Krishna told the gopis, go home. You don't need to be with me personally. Hear about me, remember me, chant my glories, have darshan of my deity, and that's better than being with me personally. Exact same verse, a few chapters later. And this purport actually, this verse actually did have commentary by the Acharyas. So I was very happy to see what they had to say, because it's actually very relevant. We can't be with Krishna, we can't even aspire to be with Krishna all the time. How to develop our bhakti? It's by following the process. Navaveda bhakti, Shravana, Kirtana, Smarana, Vandana, Dasya, Sakya, like the 9 processes. And 4 of them that Krishna stressed especially in that verse. So I found it, very revealing. And it's the same here, that Karma Muni, he doesn't need to be in the association of the Lord directly. He'll hear about him, he'll chant, and that way he'll be actually more connected to the Lord in the mood of separation. So when the gopis were not with Krishna, they were even more intensely absorbed in Krishna than when they were face to face with Krishna. As Prabhupada says, this is a very high platform of devotional understanding. The mood of separation was, I'll just end with this point, the mood of separation was introduced in our sampradaya by Madhavendra Puri. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was telling the story of Madhavendra Puri's devotional service, Madhavendra Puri was sent by Gopal to bring the chandan from Puri, and how Madhavendra Puri discovered the deity. The Lord appeared to him and told him to excavate Gopal out of the ground near Govardhan Hill. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, when he visited the temple of Gopal, Kirchor Gopinath, he told the whole story to Nityananda Prabhu and the other devotees on his way to Puri. So the culmination of the story is Madhavendra Puri's feelings of separation from Krishna. And there are several verses that describe how this one verse that Madhavendra Puri used to chant at the end of his life, it's the same shloka that Srimati Radharani used to chant when Krishna had left Vrindavan and was in Mathura. And Radharani, feeling that great separation, she would chant this shloka. And Madhavendra Puri would also, at the end of his life, when he was feeling separation from Krishna, he would chant the same shloka. And Krishnadas Kaviraj says that only these 3 personalities can understand the meaning of this verse fully. Srimati Radharani, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Madhavendra Puri. And he says there's no 4th person who can fully understand this verse. And after Mahaprabhu recited that shloka, he went into ecstasy, fell unconscious, started doing roaring kirtan, running around. As we hear many times, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not able to contain his ecstasy. So that shloka is also a very nice way to increase that hankering mood of separation and the mood of Radharani as chanted by Madhavendra Puri and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. So what is the shloka? Ai dinata yadranatha he matranata kadavalokase hritayam tava lokakataram daita bhramyati kim karom yaham. Srimati Radharani is saying, what will I do now? Kim karomi aham. What shall I do? Literally. Now Krishna is the Lord of Mathura. He's not in Vrindavan. When will I get to see him? From not seeing him, I'm developing so much anxiety, so much distress is coming in my heart in the absence of the darshan of the Lord. So Madhavendra Puri used to recite this verse repeatedly in his last days. And it's also described when he was in that mood of separation and he was crying, then Ramachandra Puri, who is his renegade disciple, you could say, very much a Kanishta Adhikari, he came to instruct his spiritual master, saying, no, why you're lamenting, why you're crying? Brahma-bhuta prasannatma nashotachi nakangshati. You shouldn't lament, you shouldn't hanker, think of Brahman. This is a great misunderstanding, the impersonal understanding, which so much permeates, even today. The average Hindu even is an impersonalist. They believe that the ultimate mukti means to merge into the Lord, or to merge into the Brahman effulgence. So it's not just paschatya desha tarine, nirvishesha shunyavadi. The Paramātmā says that Prabhupada is destroying the nirvishesha and shunyavadi in the West. But actually, when Prabhupada came to India, he had to repeatedly smash the Mayavad conception, because most of the Indian people, even today, they think that Krishna is a manifestation of Brahman, and higher than Krishna is the impersonal Brahman, and liberation, nirvana, mukti means to merge. Recently been reading Harishari Prabhu's latest diary, which is 1976, and Prabhupada is at the Hyderabad farm, and Bombay and Waratha. He went for the Gita Pratishthan, and then Prabhupada went to Pune, Mahabaleshwar. And repeatedly, whenever Prabhupada is interacting with guests, he's having to smash this Mayavad in personal conception, because it's so prevalent and so insidious. It's a great impediment on the path of bhakti. So this Ramachandra Puri, he was criticizing, trying to correct his spiritual master. He created a great offense, and therefore later on he also criticized Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he had no bhakti rasa. He was just a dry critic and dry logician, and he had such temerity that he was even able to criticize his spiritual master, criticize Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and cause so much distress to the devotees. So much so that when he left, it's said that it was like a great weight had been lifted off the shoulders of the Vaishnavas, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would respect him, and therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was starting to eat very little. He wasn't accepting invitations, and the great joy of the devotees in Puri was to invite the Lord and feed him. So because of Ramachandra Puri, that was halted for some time. So once Ramachandra Puri left, it was a source of great happiness for all the Vaishnavas. So like that, we can also cultivate the mood of Madhavendra Puri in separation of the Lord, and understanding that is actually a higher principle even than being together with the Lord. Just like many of Srila Prabhupada's disciples had very little association with him, but they followed his instructions, for their entire lives, just like Srila Prabhupada took the instructions of his spiritual master, his life and soul. He didn't have much personal association. Many of our senior Vaishnavas who were disciples of Srila Prabhupada didn't have much association. Sometimes they didn't even get initiated in person. There are some Prabhupada disciples who got initiated by letter, and they may never have even seen Srila Prabhupada, because they joined 76, 77, they got initiated by letter, and they never saw Prabhupada. And the mass devotees, most of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada had very, very little association. But that didn't stop their dedication. They were able to follow the instructions. And even now, 50 years later, we had devotees like Indira Prabhu, who just very recently, we had not just one, but two celebrations for his appearance day. He dedicated his whole life to doing kirtan. We have right here in Mayapur, Jananivas Prabhu, who we had his appearance day a few days ago, 54 years of dedication. So like that, you can see the instructions of the spiritual master can carry one through so many decades of devotional service, even if the Vani, even if the Vapu Seva may have been minimal or not at all. So this is actually much more practical way of performing devotional service. Very few of us can expect to get close, intimate association with the spiritual master, but the instructions are there for everyone to follow. So it's 9 o'clock, I would like to end here. If there are any comments or questions from the senior Vaishnavas, Vasudev Prabhu perhaps can start.
Hare Krishna, thank you for this excellent class. About the subject of offenses to devotees, the second offense to the holy name would be to blaspheme the devotees who've dedicated their lives to spreading Krishna consciousness. Is this to say that to blaspheme other people who may not spread the holy name but practice, or non-devotees, that to blaspheme them is not an offense to the holy name?
Sadhu Ninda. I'm not sure of the exact original Sanskrit, but I think it's quite simple. Sadhu Ninda means to criticize a sadhu. So again, it kind of harks back to the Madhyama Adhikari platform that they don't criticize. They'll avoid the non-devotees or the Avaishnavas, and they'll try to befriend the Vaishnavas, worship the Lord, and give mercy to the fallen. So this practice of criticism is a very big detriment in bhakti. Just like Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, he's not spoken about much, but one quality that is prominent, or that he's glorified for, is that he will never criticize any Vaishnava. So this is actually a much safer position, to not see faults, not find faults, not speak about anyone's faults, even if the faults are genuine, unless one has the adhikar or the authority, unless that person is your subordinate, your disciple, or your junior, or you have responsibility to train them. It's better not to criticize or to point out faults. Now, what to speak of criticizing senior Vaishnavas? Now, in this day and age of social media, it's very common, that everyone and everything gets criticized, and people can do it very securely from their device at home, anonymously, with fake names also. But this is all, very much against the principle. The nindadi shunya hritamip sutta sankalabdya. The devotee who has no propensity to criticize is the most sought after association, according to Rupa Goswami. So we should be very cautious and careful, and in what mood we want to point out someone's fault or perform some criticism. Srila Prabhupada, he would criticize his disciples to, encourage them, to improve them, to bring them up to a higher standard. Even Jagannath Mishra, we talked about, his purpose in chastising Nimai was to correct him, to make him a better person. So we have to be very careful of what's our motivation and what is our connection with that person. Will they accept if we try to correct them, or will it just become a daksha yagya where people are criticizing and counter-criticizing? And we see that very, very common in this modern day. Some thoughts.
Thank you, thank you.
Jamashtami Bro.
A couple questions. I think in an earlier class, one devotee brought up that one spiritual master with an ISKCON, before marriage, advises his disciple to inform his future wife that at the age of 50 I will leave. Have you ever heard that one before?
Not particularly. And
I can't recall, but I'm pretty sure it came up in one of the classes that someone does that. You didn't know that one.
It's an aspiration, because for every grihastha at the age of 50, it may not be, the situation may not be so conducive. It's a principle that one has to work towards too.
Yeah. So here's another question. At the beginning of the purport, in Bhagavad-gītā, everything is resting on Him, the Supreme Lord, but that does not mean the Supreme Lord is also everywhere. This is, then it says, this mysterious position has to be understood by highly advanced devotees. So I realize I'm not an advanced devotee. So what does it mean that isn't the Supreme Lord everywhere? I mean, Supersoul,
Yeah.
Brahmajyoti.
Yeah, it's interesting point. Same question came in my mind actually when I read this. Because we know that Krishna is everywhere, but this is more that he's not everything. This is, again, leading back to that impersonal concept that everything is one. So that's what is actually meant by this verse, that, there's achintya bheda bheda tattva, but it's interesting, we mostly focus on the bheda, that there's a difference between the Lord and the living entities. There's simultaneous oneness and difference. That's why it has to be understood by highly advanced devotees. Achintya bheda bheda tattva is it's a very subtle philosophy, and even for us who know the principle, we mostly consider the difference, that we are different from the Lord and we can never become one with the Lord. We can be one in spirit or one in mood, we can serve the Lord, but we'll never merge into the Lord and lose our individual existence. So that's the, as far as my understanding is, that's what the principle being spoken of here, the Prabhupada is quoting from Bhagavad-gītā. Mayi te te shuchapyaham, I'm in me, but they're not in, I'm in them, but I'm not everything. So that's my understanding. There is a little bit subtle and could be a source of confusion. Maybe you can elucidate also.
No, it sounds, you did a good service with that explanation. One other point, this is one of my favorite pastimes. Prabhupada was instrumental in fundraising and organizing the construction of a Gaudiya Math temple, opening of a Gaudiya Math temple in Mumbai. And when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati came to inaugurate the temple, the deities, one sannyasi disciple said to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Abhay Babu did a wonderful service here. He should become the temple president. And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, you leave him alone. On his own, he will do everything. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur knew what Prabhupada's position was, even though there was so little sangha between the two of them.
Yeah. Sometimes actually being too close to the spiritual master can be a cause of familiarity and offense. And we're saying with some of Srila Prabhupada's servants, they even gave up devotional service because they too close, too intimate. Familiarity breeds contempt, and they start to see faults and and doubts in their mind. And some of Srila Prabhupada's servants in the early days, they actually left Krishna consciousness. So it's actually better to be a little distant and keep a more reverential attitude. And we see with Ramachandra Puri also, he was witnessing this intimate mood of Madhavendra Puri, but he couldn't understand it. He wasn't on the platform to understand it. Whereas Ishvara Puri, he's glorified as the perfect disciple, that he helped Madhavendra Puri in his last days. He took care of him, physically and helped him to remember the Lord. And that way he's glorified as a great disciple. Just like Indra Prabhu also, he's known to be, he would do kirtan in the temple, but actually one of his most cherished services, what he would chant for devotees who were leaving their bodies in Vrindavan. He would go and sing to help that dying soul, the devotee, to remember Krishna. So since we're on the subject, I also had that experience when my mother was passing away. Indra Prabhu came, and he did several days of very long, very deep, intimate kirtans to help my mother remember Krishna in her last moments. So it's a great service we can do for devotees, just like Ishvara Puri did for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for Madhavendra Puri. So I'd like to end here. Thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Sarva-bhūtāni ki, Gaur Premanandi.